questions to the best of my knowledge. But if I am not able to do so, I'll get back to you with the updated data. Um, Before we start into this presentation, does anyone have an idea what cloud is? You can all give your inputs.
So what I know of cloud is maybe there's a place to store and so Google provides places to store data. I think even Amazon provides place to store data, and you can operate on that data, especially when your system is small and it cannot take that data, or it does not have that computing power. We can transfer that work to the cloud.
Okay, okay. Yeah, that we can say that is a form of cloud, yes. Anyone else?
So it's a kind of a virtual infrastructure. So the biggest benefit of cloud is if you want to start a company, you technically don't need any servers or any physical space to this thing. So people like companies like Microsoft or Amazon or all those things, they provide those infrastructure at their end and expose those functionalities to the people who want to consume. So as your business grows, you really don't have to really worry about it, because the agility, the kind of backup, the supports, everything is built into something called cloud. So it's everything is virtual. You just can run a business from your home. You don't need any physical space at all, which is a kind of a liability for companies when they start. So there's a so it's not that a cloud never existed. Cloud always existed.
Yeah.
Most of the data centers, if you look at it in the companies, they are a form of cloud. Only thing what is happening now in industries, people are maybe consolidating those data centers and moving to a couple of providers who are able to provide such services, so that the overhead cost or running operational cost or any sort of procurement cost is all within their what you call budget. So something like that. Yeah.
Actually, that is also another very big use of cloud. What Elijah Bhaiya mentioned was cloud. We are using storage as a service, cloud storage as a service we are using. What Pastor Luke mentioned, we are using infrastructure as a service over there. So for storage as a service, infrastructure as a service, we'll all look at all these functionalities as we go about in our slides. Anyone has any other doubts or any questions or any thing they want to share about cloud? Okay, if not so, we'll just get started. So from the time I have entered this world, I've seen a PC, along with that the hardware part. When I was in school, I was taught the hardware is what you can see and touch, and the software is what you cannot see. And I mean, you can see, but you cannot touch. So the software is what is installed on the hardware. So when I first saw my first computer, it had a monitor, it had a CPU with it had a mouse with it. So all these things were all connected to the monitor, and everything was dependent on each other. Without the CPU, I could not get the compute power. Without the monitor, I could not control what I could see on the screen. So over the period of time, the CPUs got shorter. There were such huge bulky devices which got shorter. Then they started getting attached to the monitor itself. Then over another period of time, we saw that the mouse was removed. It was replaced by the keypad that we have, and all those dependencies slowly and slowly started getting reducing. So first, what computer meant for us was a monitor, a huge CPU box, a mouse, and then we came to laptops. Now we have tablets. So we see that one by one, all the dependencies they are reducing. So for a computer, if we see, we need not just imagine the CPU along as a separate part along with that. Similarly, as and when time grew and we grew in technology, we came to see something called cloud, wherein you have your PC, but in the PC, how much CPU you have, that doesn't matter anymore for how much compute power you need. How much storage your computer is having, that does not depend on how much storage you actually need. So even if you go to your disk and you check out your space, how much disk size is there, how much free size is there, you need not worry about downloading a huge application anymore on your personal laptop, because it can all be viewed from the cloud. It will be as if you have all those things that you are seeing in the cloud. It will be as if you have all those things on your personal laptop. So we are seeing that one by one, all the layers are getting separated. Now, when we had the laptop, we can have multiple operating systems running on it. On the same piece of hardware that is the laptop, we can have Mac OS running, we can have Linux OS running, we can have Windows OS running. So now one operating system need not be there just on one laptop. So this is somewhat kind of the separation of layers that we are doing as we are growing in the technology. This is some of the contents that we'll be going through: what cloud computing is, what is its history, some of its benefits, and like Pastor Luke talked about, when we have a huge data center on premises, how can we compare it to the cloud? How will it be better for us? And we'll see some of the cloud deployment models and the types of cloud services, some of which we discussed in the beginning itself. So here we talk about what the whole buzz is about. Some people say, what is cloud? Some people say that it's just someone else's computer whose location you do not know. It's not just that. It's much more than that. It has much more to offer, just beyond compute, just beyond storage. So the National Institute of Standards and Technology, it has issued a white paper on cloud, and it says that cloud computing is a model for enabling convenient on-demand network access to a shared pool of configurable computing resources like networks, servers, storage, applications, and services that can be rapidly provisioned and released with minimal management effort or service provider interaction. A bit heavy that is, but let's break it down. What is cloud computing? It is enabling convenient on-demand network access. On-demand means that, for example, you're running a sales company, you are running Amazon, and in the time of example, Diwali or Christmas, you have massive sales, and more and more people are logging into your site. So that time you need more resources. So that time the demand has increased. So you need more network access, you need more resources, you need more compute power. So that on-demand need can be met via cloud. But if you have an ideal data center, a legacy storage system, that time if the demand has increased, you will need to increase your servers, you will need to increase their maintenance, because maintaining a data center is another huge task. And then you'll be able to configure all your computing resources as well according to your needs, and they can be rapidly provisioned with minimal management effort or service provider interaction. So cloud resources is just like renting resources, like when you go and live in a house that is not yours, but you are renting it. So when I rent a computer, it means I am just using the compute resources that is provided by the cloud, and I need not download or install the entire operating system on my own personal laptop. It can be just like another window, and when I open that window, it will be as if that OS is installed on my personal laptop. And the beauty of it is that you only pay for what you use. So the time that you are not using the resource, it may be a virtual machine as we call it. If you're not using it, then you need not pay for it. It's like switching off your computer. So you're not paying at that time. You only pay for what storage services you are using. Some of the company provides these services. I mean, the company providing these services is referred to as cloud provider, and some of the leading companies are Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Provider, and the basic things, the basic services that they provide are categorized into four. That is the compute power, the storage, networking, and analytics. So for compute power, they may provide you some virtual machines. It will be as if your machine is there, but virtually. It is not there on your personal physical hardware. And it can provide storage, like Elijah Bhai mentioned in the beginning. We have Dropbox, we have Google Cloud, we have Apple Cloud, we have all the clouds for storage. And especially for the end users and the increasing rise in social media, we have so much of media files, and we have nowhere to store it, and we dump everything on the cloud, and we need not worry about our devices extending, or our devices, how much storage it has. We need not worry about that. It also provides us networking services. We have very secure connections between the cloud provider and our data center. And then we have analytics also, which helps us to uh, determine how much more cost will be involved in the coming years, how much better we should do as a company. Then we can have a look at the history of the cloud. So in the early 1960s, the computer scientist John McCarthy came up with the concept of time sharing and enabling organizations to simultaneously use an expensive mainframe. This computing is described as significant contribution to the development of the internet and a pioneer of cloud computing. So on one mainframe itself, we could have simultaneous users. Then in 1970, VMware came up with the idea of virtualization software. In virtualization, what happens is that you have your machine, your physical hardware. On that, you have other machines as well, which is called as virtual machines, which so that you can have more than one operating systems, which have their own compute power, their own CPU utilization, their own disks, and again, you are not limited by how much capacity your physical machine has. Then in 2003, Zen Hypervisor came into picture, which is a software system. Now, how this works is that you have your hardware, you install hypervisor in it, and on top of hypervisor, you have multiple operating systems running. So you can say in a way, you have multiple machines in a single machine. Then in 2006, AWS, Amazon came up with AWS, that is Amazon Web Services. And first was its Elastic Compute Cloud, which is the virtual machine form of service that they are offering. It is infrastructure as a service. We will look at this term infrastructure as a service in the coming slide. And it allowed people to access computers and run their own applications on them. Now, in 2003, when we had our machine and we were installing hypervisor on it, we did not install even hypervisor on our machine now. Now in AWS, it said that you just log into our portal and you provision as many machines as you need. Then it came up with a storage service called Simple Storage Service S3, and it also introduced pay-as-you-go model, so you need not worry for payment of the resources that are not currently being used. Then in 2008, Google came up with its cloud. It announced App Engine, a platform for developing and hosting web applications in Google managed data centers. Now, if you're a web developer, you will know that you need a web server, you need many dependencies to host your application. So Google came up with App Engine, where you need not worry about all those things. Just develop your website and then you can host it on Google Cloud. Then Azure came up. It announced itself in Microsoft announced Azure in October 2008. It started with the codename Project Red Dog, and then it released Windows Azure, which got renamed as Microsoft Azure in February 1, 2010. Then in 2003, we see that the worldwide public cloud increased so much that the market raised to 78 billion pounds, up to 18.5% on 2012, of which infrastructure as a service was the major offering that was growing rapidly across every cloud service provider. Then we have a look of what are the benefits of cloud computing. Firstly, it is very, very cost effective. Now, cloud computing provides you a model where you can pay as you go, which is a consumption based pricing model. So the consumption-based model brings with it many benefits, which includes that you do not have to pay any upfront costs for your infrastructure, like Luke mentioned in the beginning. So if I'm a company, I want to start a company, I need a data center. In that, I need server racks, I need multiple servers, I need cooling devices, I need to maintain the temperature of the data center because servers tend to heat up a lot. We need not worry for any of that. You need to purchase and manage infrastructure uh, initially before in the data center environment, but now all that is not at all a worry. Then the ability to pay for additional resources when they're needed, that also is taken care of because cloud provides a model uh, as wherein you can auto scale your services, your resources. In case the demand is high, you can auto scale. It means it is highly scalable. You can do vertical scaling or horizontal scaling, which means that when you are scaling vertically, you are increasing the compute power of your existing resources, and when you are increasing horizontally, which means you are provisioning more resources or you are adding more, example, virtual machines to your infrastructure. It also helped for better cost prediction. So we have a cost calculator where we can calculate our cost beforehand, and we can accordingly lay out our plans for every quarter if you are a company. Then it's we talked about it's highly scalable. Then it's highly elastic. Elastic also, it means that we can scale up, scale out according to the need. And when you're in the cloud, you are able to focus on what actually matters. If you are uh, um, if you're a service provider that is involved in sales, you can focus on your sales area. If you are a developer for that service provider, if you are a web designer, you can focus on that. And rest all the things, if the demand is increasing, all that is automatically taken care of. Also, if a disk fails in your infrastructure, you need not worry about it because it is taken care by the cloud. You need not patch your operating systems. You don't need to worry about if it's being updated, if it is secure from antivirus threats, all those things. You just need to focus on what really matters for you. Then it's highly reliable also. Like I mentioned, that you have a lot of security when it comes to cloud, and it's also reliable because in case in your ideal data center situation, your firstly physical theft can happen. Secondly, if there is a disaster situation, your entire data center is lost, your servers are lost, all your data is lost, your company is shut. But in case of cloud, you can have something called replication, where you can replicate your data to various data centers across the entire globe. So if I'm a user, if I'm a company and I'm sitting in India and my user is sitting in US, then they can have the data there as well. So the data transfer rate and the data transfer time, all that is also taken care of. And also fault tolerance happens. Now, if I have a disaster in India, and God forbid, then my servers will still be safe, my data will still be safe because all of the data that I was working on, everything is replicated to other servers on the entire globe. And of course, it's global and it's secure. The next thing that we'll talk about is,
I've got a question. This replication happens on a need basis, right? Or is it always replicated?
Yeah, you have an option to do that based on what cloud server provider you're using. You can choose how often you want to replicate it, how often you want your data to be replicated, in what regions you want to be replicated, for how long you want the data to be there. For example, if I have a data, if I am a hospital and I'm having data of so many patients every single day, I need not worry. I do not need the data that is 20, 40, 50 years old, right? So we can replicate that and we can keep it for that some particular time, how much time we want it to be there.
So replicating means getting more resources means costing more money, right? Or
Yeah,
is it?
every every service that we are using from the cloud, everything will be obviously costed, but it will be very less when compared to you setting an entire data center in that country all over again.
Okay. Okay.
So in that sense, it is cost effective. You are increasing your network, but you are decreasing your cost, because most of the cloud service provider, especially the leading ones, they have data centers all over the globe.
Okay.
Replication does not cost that much if you sincerely compare it with the data center cost.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Anyone else has any doubt? Okay, I'll take it as a no. Let's move ahead. Now we'll talk about on-premises versus cloud. Now we are talking from the angle of a company. If I'm a company and for example, I'm McDonald's. Every company will have a backend infrastructure because they need to store data. They need data. They need information. All your bills, everything that you are going and doing in any company for that matter, every company will have a backend infrastructure in place. So this backend infrastructure generally was there in the data center. This still is. It's not completely everything on the cloud. So when you are starting a company, there are two things in terms of costs that come into picture. First is the capital expenditure, and second one is the operational expenditure. The capital expenditure is the upfront cost that you pay when you are building a company, how many servers you will require, what is the maintenance cost, and then what is the storage cost, what will be the backup cost. You have to have a disaster recovery also in place in case of any disaster. You need to back it all up. So all that is included in the capital expenditure. What is operational expenditure is once the services are up and running, and how much you are spending while the services are running. All that comes under the operational expenditure. Now when we talk about the cloud and the data center, if you look at this graph, with the time, as time increases, the costs keep increasing. And the demand prediction is somewhat, if you're a good company with time, your cost is increasing because your users are increasing. Then the capital expenditure, of course, if you have a good growth in the company, the capital expenditure also will keep increasing because you will need more servers since new users are using your services. Then suppose this is the actual demand, the black line is the actual demand, and you always want to have some margin so that your actual demand is not exceeding your cost. In case of an on-demand situation, sometimes this can happen that how much you've invested that is not able to meet what the demand is. So in case of cloud, you have this thing called auto scaling, wherein you can provision more resources on demand, and you can also deprovision. So if I have set up 10 virtual machines on the cloud and I'm running a company and I have more users logging in into my website or using my services during, for example, a festival season, automatically the resources that are provisioned will increase to from 10 to 100. But in case it's a normal day and I don't have so many sales, that time the demand is not so much, so it can automatically scale down also. So what extra virtual machines I needed in the on-demand situation, I do not need them anymore. So this is very cost effective also. This is one major reason why infrastructure as a service is running, growing so much from every cloud service provider. Anyone has any doubts in this?
What I like in this diagram is, it's not a doubt, maybe it's a comment maybe. If you take the area under the red curve, it is much bigger than the area under the blue curve, which is the cost over time is cheaper with the cloud compared to having actual infrastructure. Okay, just an offhand comment. You go on. Sorry.
Okay. Anyone has any doubts or anything to say?
So, Angel, my doubt is when it crosses the capital expenditure, you know, the red zone, right? So you need to increase the capital further.
Yeah, see, what capital expenditure was the upfront cost that we were paying. So upfrontly, for example, I will think that in this month I will have this much growth, so I need these many servers ready. So that is what the capital cost is. It's not the operational cost. Operational cost is seeing how much demand it has. Capital cost is predicting how much demand it may have, and accordingly I'm working for it. So in case of a data center, if I'm having my own data center and I've set up this much is the predicted growth I'll be having, and these many servers I need. So I have bought these many servers, but in case the demand has increased much more than that, then I will not be able to cater to the needs of my customers, which will be a huge problem.
Okay.
That was the downside of it. So that's why auto scaling is a huge advantage when it comes to cloud.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
The next slide talks about the different cloud deployment models. Again, we are talking about from, you can say a company, if you're a company, that angle. So if you're a public cloud, you have no local hardware to manage. You do not have your own servers, but you need to have everything on the cloud itself. And you need not worry about the updation of your servers and all those things. But you can also save you can save cost because you will not have your servers, physical servers. You will have it everything on the cloud, but it will be a public cloud so that everyone will be able to access it. In case of a private cloud, you need to create a cloud environment in your own data center. Here you buy the resources from the cloud services. So the upfront cost is still there, but it is highly secure. Where it is more useful is where we have certain compliance issues, we have certain government policies where we cannot put things up on the public cloud. And the hybrid cloud is a combination of both the public and the private cloud. For example, in your environment, you have decided that my servers can no longer take the load and I need to move to the cloud. But some servers are there which are running on which are legacy servers, they're running on legacy applications. You cannot move that on the cloud. So you can have your own private cloud. Along with that, you can have some of your resources, some of your servers on the cloud. So that will be called as a hybrid cloud. Anyone has any doubts regarding this? Okay. Now these are the different types of clouds that these examples we were discussing about since the starting. Infrastructure as a service, wherein you get the entire infrastructure. You get the virtual servers, not the physical servers. And platform as a service, it will be an example will be like you are a web application developer and you are designing a website. So you need not design all those things in your personal laptop. And if you are using heavy softwares and you are using backend databases, web servers, all those will be taken care by the cloud. You just have to use the platform from the cloud and you need to code on that. Then software as a service is mostly used by all of the people on the entire globe, because you will see some of the examples of Dropbox. You are not installing that software. So any software that you are using without installing, you can term it as software as a service. And it mostly comes from the cloud itself. Here we can see the cost and ownership comparison of infrastructure as a cloud, platforms as a cloud, and software as a cloud. So in case of infrastructure as a cloud service, no upfront costs are required because you are not setting up your own data center and you pay for only what you consume. For platform as a service also no upfront cost. For software as a service also no upfront cost, but you need to pay a subscription for that. For example, I mean, Google Slides I'm using currently because my Microsoft Office that I had installed on my personal laptop that has crashed. So now I'm still able to use Google Slides. Now the slides that you are seeing, it is not stored in any part of my computer. In my desk, nowhere you will be able to find that this slide is stored, but still we are able to see it, view it, because it is running on the cloud and I'm using software as a service to use to work on the slide or everything that is made on the slide. Then the user ownership in case of infrastructure as a service, the purchase, installation, configuration, management, everything is taken care by the by the cloud service provider. And for platform as a service, only development is what is required by the user. And for software as a service, you're not responsible for any maintenance or management of that software. That software will itself get updated. If you're using Gmail, I'm not talking about the app Gmail, but if you're using from a browser, then you need not update it. If you are anything that gets new, that comes new in Gmail, it is automatically there, already there. Office 365, many of us use in our offices. That is also a software as a service. Then cloud provider ownership. The cloud provider is responsible for ensuring that the underlying cloud infrastructure, which is the virtual machine, storage, and networking, it is always available to the user. So you need not worry if it is fails or anything like that sort happens. You you need not worry about that because the cloud provider is taking full responsibility of that. Then when you talk about platform as a service, again, the cloud provider is responsible for operating system management, the network, and the service configuration, and they provide a complete managed platform on which to run the application. When you talk about software as a service, again, the cloud provider is responsible for the provisioning, management, maintenance of all the applications. You are not even upgrading, you're not even updating your application, your software. Then IaaS is mainly used by sysadmins. If you are a new company, you will use infrastructure as a service. You will set up your own data center on the cloud. If you're using platform as a service, you may be a developer. If you're using software as a service, it can be any end user. All of us are using that. Examples of infrastructure as a service are EC2, which are virtual machines that are provided by Amazon Web Services, that is the Amazon Cloud. Then the VMs are provided by the Azure, that is the Microsoft Cloud. Then a platform as a service example is Elastic Beanstalk, where you can host your website in AWS, and Azure Web App Service. Again, you can host your website, and multiple other app services are there which are offered. Then software as a service examples are Gmail, Office 365, Google Slides. Many Google offerings are there. Many offerings are there from every cloud service provider. If you see at the management responsibilities, then in on-premises, you are responsible for every single thing. You are responsible for the application, the data, runtime, middleware, operating system, virtualization if it is there, the servers, the storage, networking, maintenance of everything is a responsibility of you as a company yourself. But if you are on the cloud and you're using infrastructure as a service, then you need not worry about the networking, storage, servers, and virtualization. What operating system you are downloading, you need to choose that. And on that operating system, middleware, runtime, data applications, what applications you're installing on your machine, that is your responsibility. Then if we talk about platform as a service, then you don't have, you you have lesser responsibilities when we talk about platform as a service. You only focus on what application you're using and what data it has along with it. Then in software as a service, as we talked about, as I'm talking about this Google Slides, I'm not updating Google Slides every now and then. Every time it adds a new feature, it is automatically updated. I just use it as a software as a service. Any questions here? Okay, if no questions, then we are almost to the end of the session. Initially, AWS came up with its cloud in the market, so it was leading for a very, very, very long time until very recently, this month itself, in 2020, Azure has come up. These are just the CEOs of all the cloud service providers. So now Microsoft Azure is currently leading the cloud war, followed by AWS, then Salesforce, and then comes Google Cloud. This is all based on the revenue projection, how much revenue they have every single company. Any questions or anything that anyone has to say? I think for a layman, most of the services will just be software as a service. I mean, you won't even come to know, and you're already using it. If you're storing anything on anywhere, yeah, for a layman, for an end user, mostly it will be storage as a service, software as a service. You will be using how much ever storage you want.
So when we see these websites, let's say you want to, nowadays there are a lot of websites where you want to merge PDFs, you want to combine PDFs, compress images. All of these are software as services, right?
Yeah, all those websites, the company who's running that website, it is up to them if they want to have their infrastructure on the cloud, or if they want to have their infrastructure on your data center. So if I'm a company, I can do anything. I can convert a PDF, or I can do anything. It is up to me how I manage my backend, how I manage my company in the backend. So if that company has its own data center and its own thing, it depends on the company what services it wants to use. But yeah, from your end user point of view, what service you are using, it is dependent on the company. I mean, we cannot say that it is a cloud offering unless and until we know that the company is using a cloud service provider.
From the user's perspective, it is anyways software as a service because I'm not installing the software on my system. I'm just using it online. How they are doing it depends upon how the company decides to do it. Right?
Yeah, but the categorization that we did, infrastructure as a service, software as a service, and app platform as a service, all these were the different kinds of cloud services that we were talking about. So what services we want to use, that can be anything. It can be massage as a service, it can be haircut as a service, it can be anything.
Okay.
You got my point?
Yes, I got it. So where do develop? So like, let's say someone is entering into clouds now, a cloud. You want to enter into this area. Where do jobs lie? What do people work on?
There are multiple. There are plethora of things you can work on. Every cloud service provider has so many things to offer. Like, okay, if we talk about, if you're entering into Azure, for example, you can be a developer, you can be a sysadmin, you can be a cloud architect, you can be a data engineer, and you can be anything. And you can, there are various learning paths that you can go through, and kind of you can have a certification for everything that will rectify what you have learned and what you have worked on. So every company is now moving to the cloud, and when we are moving to the cloud, they will need people to manage it, right? If see, every company has its own backend infrastructure. So infrastructure people are required everywhere for every company. Every company will have an infrastructure team. Similarly, if you're moving your infrastructure from the traditional data center to cloud, it will need people who are skilled in the cloud as well.
So you moved as a developer to a cloud developer, right? So like, I just want to know, as a developer, let's say you're programming something. When you become a cloud developer, how much does your programming change, or what new skills you need to acquire?
Okay, so when we are talking about cloud,
Yeah, give us your background, like what you're currently doing and how you're connecting with cloud and all.
Okay. what I was doing in a previous company, I was working as an automation engineer where I was automating any kind of monitoring task. I was again there also, I was there in an infrastructure team. So any task that is taken care of by an ideal administrator, uh, system administrator. For example, you have to monitor servers, you have to look at their storage, you have to see if any, you have this ticketing tools right everywhere. So you have to keep a check on all those things. So many things can be automated if you look at it that way. If your monitoring can be automated, your reporting can be automated. For example, if you are you have expired your antivirus software, for example, then you need to update that as well. So many things are there where manual intervention is not actually required so much. That was what I was doing in my previous company. So I was connecting to remote servers programmatically, and I was keeping a check on its monitoring. I was reporting if anything is going out of hand, so that we can have a proactive analysis of our environment, and we can prevent any damage that can be done. So in this company, when I came, I started developing on the cloud, wherein anything that you can do from any cloud portal. If I talk about Azure, it has the Azure portal. If I talk about AWS, it has a management console. Then anything that you do on the cloud using GUI, everything has its software development kit. So being a Python developer, I'm using a Python software development kit from offered by Azure or offered by AWS, wherein again I can do many things. I can automate many manual tasks. So when you're talking about compute resources, and it's not just about virtual machines, it has reduced the dependency even more. We need not have even virtual machines. If you want to, for example, a small example is like if I want to keep a check on news, and if I want to see if there is any coronavirus related news that has come up, and what I will do as a person, I will go and log into that website every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, every half an hour, and I'll see how much is the number now. So instead of that, what I can do is I can I can programmatically do this task by uh, telling the cloud service provider that whenever you see that a corona related news has come up, just send me an email or notify me. So without even having a virtual machine, there's something called functions in Azure, and there's something called logic apps in Azure, wherein it is kind of an orchestration tool. So you can provide your inputs, see that you see, I need not even program for that. They have certain modules where you can place, see, this is the input that I need to check in on this website, this news website, and then if any coronavirus update comes up, just send me an email, and that will be orchestrated on the portal itself. It can be done programmatically as well. Similarly, for AWS also, it has Lambda functions where you need not even worry about the virtual machine. You need not have a server also. It is further broken down. You need not worry what virtual machine it is running on, how much compute power it has, how much storage it has, what is CPU utilization. You need not worry about any of that. So it has reduced to this point that you can just run a logic on the cloud, and you need not buy even a virtual machine. You need not have even an infrastructure for that. You just need to run your function. That is all. Did I clear your doubt?
Yes, 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 yes. So since you were a Python developer like earlier, the cloud also has Python software development kits.
Yes.
So and over that you will have to get some new skills where you can transfer your earlier learning to what you're doing now, right?
Yeah, it is actually if you are a developer, it is not very difficult because when you code, you write functions, right? So when you are using a function, you need not write the entire code again and again. You just need to call the function. So Azure, AWS, GCP, Google Cloud Platform, everyone has predefined functions in their software development kits. I just need to use that function. I need not, I mean, it's not very difficult in that sense. Did I answer that?
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes, I was just thinking about all the people that are selling selling web hosting. Is it also based on the fact that they are buying some storage from the different providers?
There is a possibility. If you are a company, you have that power. You can decide if you want to have your backend in a data center, or if you want to have your backend in cloud. It is a very much possibility. Many companies have moved to the cloud. Okay, yeah. By mistake, I closed my slide. I was trying to increase the volume and I pressed F4 instead of F5. Anyway, any questions? I'll just reopen the slide. Give me a second.
So, what are the certifications available for getting into cloud? How much does it cost? What is the learning curve? What do you think?
Yeah,
Yeah, Elijah, bro, it all depends upon the way you want to enter. Whether you want to enter as a software as a developer or infrastructure as a developer or a sysadmin, all those stuff. Recently, I finished OpenStack sysadmin. So I am working as a system administrator for Ericsson Cloud. So that is a customization cloud. So backend they are using IBM Cloud, that is Red Hat. So Red Hat provides the certification. So similarly, whichever the provider like AWS has provided all the type of certifications, and like 17 certifications they are providing currently. So it all depends upon the platform which you are choosing, the software as a developer or sysadmin, infrastructure, all those stuff. It depends.
yeah. That is correct. Generally, what I've seen is that Amazon Web Services, their certifications are costlier than Azure. So one, if you're going for AWS, Amazon Web Services, and you are going for the architect path, then the first certification is optional. The first certification in every cloud service provider is actually optional. Actually, if you go for Azure, then the fundamentals exam is completely optional, and then the next step in every area that you are choosing from, that you have to move to the professional level of it. So similarly, in AWS or Amazon Web Services, you have the cloud practitioner, which is optional. Then you become an AWS certified solutions architect associate. Then if you give this exam, and then if you want to give the next level exam, that is for the solutions architect professional. So for AWS solution architect associate, for currently INR, I think it is around 12,000 including tax, 12,000 including tax. And if you are going for Azure certification, obviously the optional certification, the first level of certification will not be as costly as the solution architect associate. This is around 9,000 or something. No, yeah, I need to check on this cost. For Azure, the optional is around 9,000, and then the next one keeps increasing. So it's like that. I actually wanted to show a demo, but my subscription got lost. I wanted to show how easy and how quick it is for you to get a virtual machine up in the cloud and running. It's just a matter of few minutes. What you will ideally require so much of time, planning, and money, it will take only few minutes if you are doing having a virtual machine on.
As an individual user, let's say I'm not going through the company, how much does it cost to have a VM up?
To set up a VM,
Yes.
Initially when you set up your account, you will be given some a certain amount of money. I don't want to say the amount because I'm not sure about it. It will have this much amount of money in your account, so you can use that much. Now every resource in every cloud provider, it will have a free tier, so you are using actually that money that is set apart for you, and you can utilize all those resources that are categorized under free tier. So, okay, let me show you the calculator app also. If you are setting up,
Also later, Angel, you had a Google slide, right? Can you show that slide as well?
yeah, this is it.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
here you can pre-calculate all your costs if you are choosing Azure Cloud, and you want virtual machines. How many of it do you want? Here you can see which region you want to set up your virtual machine in. Any region you can choose what operating system it has, or is its type. Then is it in standard tier, basic, low priority tier. Then this is the type of uh, hardware that is there. So how much RAM is there, how much temporary storage is there, how many virtual machines you want, for how many hours you want it to be running, for how many days or how many months. Then you can see that the upfront cost is nothing because you are not setting it by yourself. The virtual machine is already set up by Microsoft Azure, and the monthly cost will be this much predicted. Want to check it in IMAL? Here, if you see, I have opted for many things. This is IDB. I mean, I have not made any changes to the input. You can just make a change in your input, how much data, this size you need, and you will be able to see how much monthly cost you are putting. Also, every cloud provider doesn't just offer pay as you go model. It also offers a model where you can have upfront costs. Like for example, you can have reserve costs for 3 years. You know that 3 years my company will be up and running, and that is much reduced cost as compared to pay as you got model if you are using every day, if your resources are getting used up every single day. So if you have a reserve of 3 years, you pay a lot less as compared to pay as you go. And this 3 years amount you can pay every month, or you can pay in the initial stage as well. That is also an option.
So for analytics, I know that a lot of analytics, when people's computing environment fails, they outsource the analytics on the cloud, and then that also can be done here, right? For that also, would I have to set up a VM, or do I have? Is there any other option?
Yeah, see here you can see compute, network, and storage are the few things we talked about. It has many other things. It has something called containers also, which is even higher level of virtual machines. You need not even have a virtual machine. You can just have a container instance running on the virtual machine. container is another another layer, you can say. Then for analytics also, you can see there are various services that are provided by Azure. So if you want to have Azure machine learning, then you can opt here and you can look at services. These are the major categories of services that Azure is providing. Under each category, there are different services. So you can opt for the services and you can see how much is the cost. Also, you can have a cost advisor on Azure. Every cloud service provider, I'm just talking about Azure currently because this is just an example. Every cloud service provider will have its own advisor as well. So they will keep on reporting how much is utilized now and what is the cost now. And if you can set an alarm or a reminder or a notification where you can get notified if your costs have increased a certain limit and all those things. Any other questions? Jackie has entered the waiting room.
No, I admit it.
We are here to say Tata to Jackie. I think Robin, we can stop recording.
Anyone has any more questions? I think we have enough time, 20 more minutes.
Yeah, we can stop recording and we can just discuss.
Okay.